Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Hanford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. On the podcast with us today is Peter Vonderay. He is the founder of the New York Multifamily Team at Marcus & Millichap, the nation's largest commercial real estate firm. The team specializes in New York City mid-market multifamily investments, selling an average of $1 billion of multifamily billions every year. Backed by the national platform of Marcus & Millichap, they serve private and institutional investors in the multifamily industry. In addition to that, Peter hosts Behind the Bricks, the #1 podcast about New York City multifamily real estate investing. Peter has also authored a book titled Family Secrets: Secret Strategies to New York City Multifamily Investing. This work conveys several firsthand experiences detailing how to successfully invest in the New York City multifamily marketplace. Finally, Peter's market commentary is frequently found in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Crane's New York Business, the New York Post, the Commercial Observer, and also the Globe Street and several other different publications. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule, Peter, to be with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. That's a mouthful. You read the whole thing.
Hi, Peter. And yes, thank you from me as well for sitting down with us. We're looking forward to talking to you.
Absolutely. Excited to be on your recording.
So we want you to get us started and kind of fill in a little bit of the detail, maybe focus in on exactly what you're doing right now in your business.
So exactly what we're doing. So just to play off a little bit off the bio, I run a team. It's got about 40 people on it, and we sell all the what we call are the mid-market apartment buildings in New York City. Anybody who's been here knows there's a lot of residential buildings in New York City and the boroughs. And so our team is up to the task of selling. When I say mid-market buildings, those are generally buildings that are valued between about 10 million and 100 million. So we'll sell about 100 of those a year. And I run the team. So it's part of that is being active on the sales side with some of our larger projects, and then everything else that comes with running an organization like that.
And so one of the things I want you to kind of walk us through is along this journey that you've had to kind of create and kind of develop this team and kind of get the experience that you have, can you think about a tough decision that you had that, I kind of like to call it the sore thumb tough decision, where it kind of sticks out in your head of like, yep, I'm always going to remember that. But you know what? I'm glad I went through it because I learned a lot of lessons. So walk us through that tough decision and some of the lessons you learned through that one.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind, and I would probably have to go back earlier to the beginnings of the team and the first part of my career that would think back as a tougher decision. And I think a lot of people can relate to this because they have this tendency, which was that I try to do almost everything myself. And that goes to simple decisions or lack of decisions as not hiring a high level, very experienced and quality assistant, to bringing in other capabilities that I could surround myself with so I didn't have to do everything. So I definitely got caught up in the beginning of the career of, the cash flow isn't there and you're going to try to do everything yourself. And that's a mental leap, I find, that you have to get yourself across that will get you to a certain point, but it's not going to get you to some of the bigger levels where you're playing a bigger game. It's all about, I've found that it's about combining other people on your team and who can work with you, whether they're in your office or you use them virtually, that can really add a high level of capability to what you're doing. So I definitely existed. I guess tough decisions lesson is for many years during the early part of the team's formation in my career is I tried to do too much of that stuff myself. And I think part of that is it's a mental shift. The other part is as you're starting a business as an entrepreneur, you've got this eye on cash flow. And you're trying to be very, I don't know what the word is, but you're very cognizant of how you're spending your cash. And I think of an example of something like a company like Apple when they developed the iPhone. I mean, they're losing millions and millions of dollars for years while they're in the development stage. And then it's years later that they reap the benefit of that. And I think as entrepreneurs, the lesson is if you're really going to be passionate about something and you want to start something that's going to be big or have an impact, you've got to be willing to make an investment up front and understand that in the big picture, it may take 3 years for those investments to pay off. And in this category, in this question, the investment that we're talking about is you're paying other teammates and team members to surround yourself with so you can do what you're best at.
Well, I can definitely relate to that, Peter, because one of the things that I had to do in my business before I was able to scale it is have that mindset shift, as you call it. Where I'm the type of person that's very much like you, that I want to do everything myself. And I think that in the beginning it was good for me, and I'm sure you'd probably say as well, it was good for you to kind of go through some of that. But I think for me, and I would probably assume that that's why this has been a tough decision for you, is you probably hung on to it just a little bit too long. And if you would have been able to release that and be able to have that mindset of bring on more people. Yeah, I might lose some money in the very beginning, but that'll allow me to be more productive and bring in more sales and more productivity in the whole entire organization, and it'll allow you to scale and grow. I think that's the mindset shift that we have to have.
Yeah, and 100% of this, and part of it is also how you relate to control, because you're the lead entrepreneur. You want everything to be a certain way. You're probably neurotic about how things are, and that.
No, not me.
No, yeah, not you, right? I mean, look, I definitely was at certain points, but you've got to get your mind around the fact that if you're really going to grow, you've got to release some of that control. And, so that's another aspect besides the financial that I think, you have to evolve with how you relate to that.
And I tell you what, it definitely adds an additional layer of complexity to the business. But until you can get to that mindset shift of adding that additional layer of complexity, whenever you have to bring on more people, it does make things more complex, but it allows you to be more productive in the areas that your time is more valuable in, trying to have that shift in your mindset of, what are some tasks that you are doing right now, that are, $10 an hour tasks that you should be turning those off to somebody else. Yes, you can do them, but is there other things that somebody else could be doing that would free you up to be able to do what you're really good at, which is making sales, bringing in more clients, things like that. And that's kind of the 100%. Mental shift that you have to have.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think if you look statistically at all the entrepreneurs out there, you have 100 of them in the room. I think the numbers in the 90s that many of them are not actually running businesses. They've just created a job for themselves. And it's out of the 100, quote unquote entrepreneurs, maybe it's 10 or 8 or 12 of them that are actually running businesses. And that, I think the difference between whether you're in the 90 category or you're in the 10 or 8 category is closely related to what we're talking about, how you're going to make investments and how you're going to relate to teamwork and bringing in other members that are going to surround you and letting them do their thing. And I would just add to you that it's been my experience that, because you mentioned complexity, it's been my experience that with the right people surrounding you, that the complexity actually goes way, way down.
For you it does, but not for the business.
Yeah, maybe not for the business, but my experience.
That's the complexity I was referring to, though, is the complexity of having to hire more people. You have more complexity of paying those people and keeping them on and losing them. And so you're right. You want to make sure you find that right person and that right team, but your life should hopefully become less complex. But the business itself, I think, becomes a little bit more complex because, we have an organization right now that has almost 50 people in it, and that's complex. Now, my life has been much easier, but you have a lot more training and, like she said, and things like that.
Correct. Yeah.
I think perhaps the challenge that I most underestimated, when we started hiring and expanding was just keeping everybody trained and on the same page all at the same time, and doing that with the turnover as well as with the changes, because I've come to realize that it's part of working with an entrepreneur, but no two things are the same from week to week is what it feels like sometimes. We're constantly making adjustments and improving, and I think all that's good, but keeping everybody on the same page and everybody up to date and trained becomes a bigger challenge.
Right. Well, when you say that, you remind me, I was having another conversation with someone yesterday similar to this topic. And when you talk about turnover and, people move around a lot today, that's part of the work culture, I guess. But I have found that if you look at some of the reasons why we've been successful, the top 3 would be we intensely specialize in a particular niche in the marketplace. We market ourselves well, so people know who we are. It's who knows you, not what you know, to a certain extent. But the other part is that as far as when I'm looking for people on our team and people to work with, and these are both on the client side and then also more importantly on the team member side, is I really place a lot of emphasis in the hiring and also in terms of how we retain and work with people, that I'm not looking for a 12-month relationship or a 18-month relationship. Many of the people that I work with that are on the team, I've worked with for 5, 10, 15 years, some of them. And even the people who have been working on the team that are 5 years in the business, for their age group, that's like 3 times the average in terms of longevity and staying in one organization. And I think from a competitive advantage standpoint for yourself or your teammate or just for anybody in any industry today, I think there is the stability and actually staying in one place and developing a specialization or specialized skill is actually, I'm noticing, is a big competitive advantage, because the majority of the world is moving around every 12 to 18 months. So I'm just noticing that all come up, that I think is probably a component you guys have seen too.
Yeah. So let's shift here a little bit and talk about another tough decision that you had. That the tough decision came across your desk. You might have taken some time to go through some things to make that right decision, and that actually turned out really good for you. So talk us through one of those tough decisions that you had and maybe some lessons that you learned through it.
I would say the one that sticks out, and this has really turned out to be a theme for us, is when the financial downturn occurred. Look, now it's 10 years ago. But before that time, we used to sell several different types of product buildings, essentially. So we'd sell multifamily buildings. Sometimes we'd run into a commercial building or a retail building. So we were less specialized. And as a result of the downturn and the tightening of the market, and that basically threw us into a period where we were evaluating every aspect of the business, who our clients were, where we were making money, where we had a competitive advantage, where our margins. So in the short term, we actually ended up saying no to several categories of business, in the commercial side and the retail side. And these could obviously could translate into any other business. So that was a little short-term pain that we went to that ended up, being a long-term distinguishing factor and gain for us. That was, I guess you could call it a tough, but I've found that with most of I get much more value in the long term from the negative things or obstacles that come up for us that are in the short term problems that we have to deal with. In almost every case, if I look back 5 years later, as a result of those, the creativity that we developed because of them, or the new capabilities that came out of those, ended up being something that was incredibly useful for us later on. We just didn't realize it at the time.
Well, and I think that what you said there, the specialization is very important in any type of business, but especially in your business, because not only did you specialize, one level deep, you're almost like 3 levels deep into this specialization, because you're in commercial real estate. That's the first level. I guess you could maybe even call the first level, instead of being nationwide, you're in New York City. So you're in New York City. And so that's the first level. The second level is I'm in commercial real estate, because real estate's a really large open market. But then you also are saying, I'm going to do multifamily, but not just multifamily. I want multifamily mid-tier, 10 million to 100 million. That's my sweet spot. And that's where I'm going to focus.
Yeah. And look, we're in New York, so the market's big enough so we can be that specialized. But if we were somewhere else, the parameters would look different.
Well, I think that's amazing, because, a lot of times we don't do that kind of a specialization, and you've taken it to the next level. And you're right. Every market you can't specialize to that level, but a lot of times people would be surprised at how much they can focus on one market or focus on one area and one specialization, how it can actually expand your business, because now you're really going deep and going heavy in one particular thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing that, I wish we had a way to maximize this capability, but obviously we're very local here. So we're very specialized, but I'm doing real estate. It's on the ground. You have to be here. It's very tied to where we are. But if we were doing something that, just looking at, and you guys have a lot of experiences with this, with the internet, you can specialize very, very, very into a very narrow market. But if you own that specialty with the internet, now your marketplace is actually global. So I think there's just, in the concept, there's a lot of lessons there. And it can be applied different ways. We just happen to be in the property business, so it's tied geographically local. But I think the portal that, the online marketplaces offer are huge in that category in terms of opportunities. And it's kind of counterintuitive. The smaller you get in terms of your specialty, the bigger your market becomes.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. Is it's kind of been a theme recently of the interviews that Dan and I have been doing. That, several people have talked about how the moment or the day that they decided to really specialize and hone in on a certain market, their business just took off. But
right.
They kind of talked about how it was mentally tough to get there because you feel like you're separating yourself or cutting out a huge market that you could make a bunch of money off of. So did you struggle with that same mental block or that same thinking, or was it just because the market is so big there in New York that wasn't really a concern?
We did struggle with it. And part of it was I got very clear that our capabilities would be so much better than our competition with the specialty. And, so that's why I say there's a counterintuitive aspect to this, because as we got more specialized, we actually got more important to our audience because we had that specialty.
I guess you almost create some credibility almost automatically by being a specialist.
Exactly. So that part, and talk to a martial arts master and they move their hand across the room, and a layperson, it's just them moving their hand across the room, and to someone who's got that level of awareness, they're noticing 15 different things going on in the movement. So, you definitely encounter things like that when you specialize. You pick up on nuances that others don't.
So talk to us a little bit about the strategies that you have developed and that you use when you are making these tough decisions.
Yeah, well, there's the aspect of this of, how do you come up with something in times of stress and all that kind of stuff. So I'll give you two ways. One is the practical strategy of our decision making that comes upon us. So it's been my experience that as you grow and you get more successful, one of the problems is that you have too many types of opportunities or ideas that come across either you think of them or they come across your desk. And so one of the things that you have to manage is, in the beginning, you're just trying to find people to say yes to you. And then it gets to a point where you have not too many people saying yes, but you have too many little opportunities or paths that you can find. So part of the strategy becomes, all right, I'm going to say no to more things than I'm going to say yes to keep me on the right path. And that has to be a guiding principle with yourself as the entrepreneur, and also something that's communicated to your team so everybody stays on point. So our decision making with that, and this could be whether it's an investment in technology, something that we're doing with marketing strategy, or even something that impacts something that we're doing on the service side or the product side, or a part of our specialty, is we don't want any, for us, we don't want any one-hit wonders. So if we're going to invest our time and develop a strategy about something, we want to make sure that if we were evaluating 5, we're going to cut off 4 and just pick the one that we know that the dividends that pay off 3 years from now will likely be better than those that are being produced the first year. So I think kind of more focusing on a longer term focus to ideas, investments, opportunities that are coming across our desk would probably be one of our themes that we go to. And as far as, personally, just to, brainstorm, relieve stress, all that kind of stuff, I do find that this is kind of ironic, but some of your best ideas about breakthroughs, stuff like that, new solutions to problems that you're having and, you're encountering in your entrepreneurial life, a lot of time they happen when you're taking free time, so I just try to incorporate a lot of that where you can shut out the noise. So you give your brain some time to settle down, tap into, some of the creative ideas that are out there. And, it's kind of, I guess the old saying of getting out of the trees so you can see the forest type thing.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. And then when we come back, we'll talk to Peter about some of his favorites as it relates to his business.
Okay, sounds good.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com. All right, we are back. And Peter, I want to ask you a couple of different questions and what we call the trifecta about some different favorites that you have in business. So first off, what is your most favorite technology that you use in business right now that helps make your life easier?
Okay, this one's been for the past several years, but I'm a big Evernote user. I have, as far as an app on my phone, and it's probably the combo of Evernote and the voice activated feature on your iPhone. So I have personal notes, business notes, in 15 different categories. So I've just found that using that with the voice and acted thing. So if I'm walking around in between meetings or at any time, I've become a big user of Evernote and found it to be hugely beneficial for me.
What is a favorite quote that you've heard that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
I would say probably the more you grow, the more you give.
And what about a favorite book that you've read that's either, helped you with your decision making or helped you in the way you run your business?
I've read hundreds of books, but the one that I read recently that has really stood out and been phenomenal, actually looking at it on my desk here, it's called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. It's just a great book that I've read it 1.5 times now, and it's just one of those ones that I think you could read literally.
Who's the author of that book?
The author it's 3 people, Jim Dethmer, Diana Chapman, and Kaylee Warner Klemp.
We'll put a link to that in our show notes as well so that the listeners can get a copy of that if they want. What's the next thing for you right now, Peter, on your vision or your dream board?
The next thing for us is there's actually a little bit of a pricing transition that's been happening in the commercial real estate market in general, and it's impacted New York City a little. It's been going on for about 18 months, 2 years now. So with that's creating a lot of opportunities for us. So we're just really doubling down and growing further into our market. We're still, in terms of gaining market share to the levels that we want to be at, we still have a lot of room to grow. And, so I think, the overarching goal is to increase our market share in what we do. And I think what's happening with technology and the ability to reach people, analyze things, and get the word out about what you're doing and how you connect with people, I think we're undergoing, as you guys know, look, we're doing this on a podcast. There's a massive transformation happening in all those areas. And I think over the next 3 years, it's only going to speed up. So those are all, part of what's next for us.
And so how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to contact you or, get some more information from you after listening to this podcast? Yeah.
So 2 ways. One is you can go to, as far as the New York investing goes, NewYorkMultifamily.com, all spelled out, NewYorkMultifamily.com. And then if you're just interested more in what we do and learning about the New York City marketplace, if you mentioned in the intro, I host a podcast called Behind the Bricks. You could go to BehindTheBricks.com and get information there, or look it up on iTunes and find more about our subject matter and myself there.
Awesome. Well, Peter, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today. I look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it, and it's been fun.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.